Hello, welcome to Homeschool-Life. My name is Bobby, and in this video, we are going to be looking at accounting, manual refunds, and payment reversals. To do this, we need to be logged into the admin website, and from the admin homepage, we need to access the accounting tool. We can do that in one of two ways, by clicking here or here. Once we access the accounting tool, we find ourselves on the accounts receivable listing. Now, before we get too far, I'd first like to mention when you can use manual refunds and payment reversals and what they're used for. First of all, you can only use manual refunds and payment reversals in full payment accounting categories. So invoices that are in partial payment accounting categories will not receive manual refunds or payment reversals applied to them. Where that is set up in your system is under Accounting Settings. Here are your accounting categories. There are several that are default categories that are already set up with your system. Those are shaded in gray. Notice the top one is class registration with the category code of CR. This particular payment pool is a default partial payment category. The rest are full payment, CRRP, registration renewals, signups, and then another kind of a dump category where you can put many things into. And of course, your group can set up as many additional accounting categories as you'd like. And when those are set up, they are either identified as full payment or partial payment. So to use manual refunds and payment reversals, the invoices for which those apply will need to be in the full payment accounting categories. If they are partial payment, in other words, if they're CR invoices, or if they're invoices in some other partial payment category that your group has set up, this is not the way that you would document refunds for those invoices. If you're not sure what the difference is between partial payment and full payment categories, I would recommend that you watch an accounting video called Accounting Introduction, and that is covered in depth in that video. So let's return now to the accounts receivable listing. And now let's talk about what payment reversals and manual refunds actually are. They are merely a way to document a refund on the member account that actually takes place outside of our system. When you issue this type of a refund, either that or a reversal, nothing actually is refunded from the Homeschool-Life site. That is done either by check, by PayPal refund, or paperless, depending on which system you're using. So again, the purpose of this is just to provide documentation for future reference on the member account that a refund took place. So now let's take a look at the difference between a manual refund and a payment reversal. This is a very commonly asked question. So a manual refund is used to document a refund of a paid invoice or invoices due to a cancellation of a class or an event. In some cases, there may be a system adjustment present that is not linked to an invoice. Keep in mind, in full payment accounting categories, if you have an adjustment that is not linked to an invoice, this usually indicates a credit or refund may be due. So let's take a moment here and look at an example of when this might happen. I think there's one here on the Jorgensen account. So let me access that account by clicking on this dollar icon in the statement column next to the Jorgensen family. And then let's take a look at their invoice and payment details. So as we scroll down to the adjustment section for this family, you will notice that there are two adjustments. Here's your adjustment section. And there are two of those, here and here, that do not have this invoice icon present on the adjustment record. This generally means that an adjustment was issued for a cancellation, and in this case, it looks like there was a class that was canceled. But at the time of the cancellation, the invoice or invoices were already paid. Now, you can always confirm that by going up to your payment section and your invoice section for that matter, and you can see here are those matching payments, matching invoices rather, world history, payment number 1 and payment number 2. Both of those have a yes indicator in the paid column, $25. And then you can scroll down to the payment section and you can see where those are. And the payment record for those 2 invoices is right here. If I click on the invoices icon here, I can confirm there's the payment number 1 and payment number 2 for world history. So that shows me that indeed these 2 invoices were already paid when this cancellation of the class took place. So if we turn now back to the invoice and payment detail listing for this family, I'm going to remove the filters so I can see the whole thing. And you look at the adjustments. Again, there is no invoice icon here or here. So that means, again, the cancellation occurred. It was already paid for. So now the adjustment record is there as sort of a placeholder, like there's something that happened here and the cancellation occurred, it was already paid. So as an administrator, you now have a choice to make. What do you want to do with this cancellation that took place? Are they indeed due a refund or a credit, or is there some reason why maybe they are not due a refund or a credit? Perhaps your group has a no refund policy at all. Sometimes there might be a no refund policy after a certain date. So the system holds the adjustments there, and as an administrator, you have the option of either giving them the adjustment or not. If you don't want them to have it, then you can simply delete those adjustments, and that's going to return the account where it needs to be. Okay, let's take a look at a payment reversal now. A payment reversal is different in that it is used to reverse an overpayment or a duplicate payment. It doesn't usually have anything to do with a cancellation. These are sometimes really difficult to find, but there are a few ways that you can look for them. Let's take a look at the Lambert account, because I know that there is a problem on that account. I'm going to return up here to the family drop down and select the Lambert account. The first thing that indicates to me that there might be some kind of an issue on this account is that you'll notice here that for the teacher, Melissa Walters, the family owes $25 for an IEW writing class. Here's that open invoice here. But if you look up here at the amount that the family owes, according to the system, it's $15. So those two are not the same. And that is the first indication, there's something going on here that we need to look at. So to take a deeper look into that, I click on the invoice and payment details for this member. And now I need to kind of take a look at this account and see what I can find. So I'm off by $10. So I'm looking for something that is a $10 problem. One of the things you can always look for is you can look for a payment record in a full payment accounting category that has no invoice icon in the invoices column. So let's drop down here to payments and let's look for a payment in a full payment category that has no invoice icon in the invoices column. Well, here's our invoices column. Notice here, icon for an invoice here, icon, but there's not one here. Ironically, or maybe not ironically, this $10 amount is the exact amount that we're off. So what has happened here is that the family at one point had an invoice for $10 for a cleaning fee. But if you look up here at the invoices now, there is no invoice up here for a $10 cleaning fee. So what probably happened was the invoice was created and then the invoice was paid, because we do have a record of a payment right here for $10 and a check number. So the invoice was paid, and then for some reason the invoice was deleted. This can sometimes happen if an admin says, you know what, they don't really need to pay that. We've decided that they're not going to have to pay that. So without checking further into it, they go ahead and just delete the invoice, not realizing that a payment had already been made on that invoice. So the payment record remains on the account as this indicates here, but there's no invoice attached to it. So this shows up as an overpayment or a credit because there is no invoice associated with this particular payment. So that's one thing that you can look for. This would, obviously, these people would be due a $10 refund if indeed they decided to waive that fee because they paid for it, but there's no invoice record remaining to balance that out. The other thing that you can look for is sometimes it's not so obvious and you have to really look through each payment record and find out which invoices are attached to each payment record. Let me go to a different account and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to scroll all the way down to the Marty West family. I already know from looking just at the fact that they have a $100 credit that maybe there's something I need to look at on this account. So if I go to their invoice and payment detail listing, and I kind of look through, I don't have any invoices here that are invoice icons missing on any of these payment records. I don't have any adjustments that are missing an invoice icon. So it's not going to be that obvious to find the problem. I know there is something going on though, because if you notice, there's a $100 credit. There are no outstanding invoices. They've all been paid or adjusted. So there is something going on here. Well, what I can do is I can look through the individual payment records and find out which invoices are associated with those payment records. So I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to click on this invoice icon. Notice the amount of this payment is $100. So what I should find when I click on that invoice icon is $100 worth of invoices, either one or more invoices that total $100 that were paid with that payment. So I'm going to click on the icon. And when I do that, indeed, there is a $100 invoice that was paid with this $100 payment. So this one is fine. There's nothing wrong with this one. I'm going to return back to the listing for this particular family, move my filters. So let's take a look at the second payment record here. This is the payment record for $200. Notice the amount here. So when I click on this invoice icon, I should see one or more invoices that total $200. When I click on this invoice icon, I can immediately see there's a problem here because there's only one invoice listed which totals $100. Well, that was a $200 payment. So there is a missing invoice record for this $200 payment. That does make sense now because here's my $100 credit. So what has happened is the family has made a payment of $200, which should have $200 worth of invoices attached to it, but there's only $100 worth of invoices. So again, what has probably happened here is that that invoice record, which did have to be present at some point on the account, otherwise the family could not have made the $200 payment. What has happened is that that invoice has been deleted. So the invoice is no longer there on the account. And if we actually look at it, this was for, it looks like a chemistry class for Amy. And that matches up down here with the fact that it says payment for chemistry, Amy. Well, there's a payment number 1 record missing. There's a payment number 1 and a payment number 2 here for Adrian for her class registration. There's a payment number 1 and a payment number 2 here for this biology class, but there's a missing payment number 1 invoice. So again, more than likely that invoice record has been deleted. So what has happened now is that there is a $200 payment, but only $100 worth of invoices were paid on that $200 payment, resulting in the credit that you see up here on the account of $100. So let's return now to a manual refund and how you actually create a manual refund. To do that, I'm going to return to the Jorgensen family. And if you'll recall, this is the family where they had a cancellation of the world history class for their daughter after the invoices for that class had already been paid. So now what you want to do is you want to issue them the refund through PayPal or by check or online bill pay or however your group would issue the refund. In this case, the group takes in payments by check, so they do their refunds by check. So we're going to go ahead and assume that we have already issued this refund to the family. We're going to assume that we wrote them a check, and I made a record of the check number, and let's say that the check number is 12487. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an adjustment, which is at the top here. Now, normally when you use an adjustment, it's going to bring you up a list of unpaid invoices. When you're doing payment reversals and manual refunds, you want a list of paid invoices. So before you do anything else, you select the type manual refund. This now brings up a list of paid invoices because you're doing a refund on something that's already been paid. So the next thing that you want to do is you want to pick one of the invoices for which the refund applies. I'm going to pick this one. It's the world history, and that was what the refund was for. So we're going to click there. I'm going to leave the date as is, and then I'm just going to make a note here. I'm going to say refund for cancellation of world history, and if I want to, I can name the specific student that it applies to. I don't have to choose anything here because it's already selected. Now notice here in red, there is some information that might help you if you forget some of the specifics of this tutorial. It says this adjustment type can be used to document a refund that was issued outside of this website. An adjustment and offsetting negative payment will be added to the family account so that their balance will not change. If there is already a system-generated adjustment in place for this transaction, you should delete it as it is no longer needed. Okay, so that does apply to us here. So keep in mind now, when we exit from this creation of this adjustment, we're going to go back and take a look at the already generated system adjustment, and we're going to get rid of it. We're going to delete it. Okay, so the amount of this full refund, even though we only selected one invoice at the top, the amount of this refund is $50 because it was two $25 invoices. When I'm done, I have the option of either emailing the family or not. I'm not going to do that in this case. I'm just going to save my adjustment. And now when I return to the family invoice and payment detail listing, you're going to see a couple things here. First of all, you're going to see here is the manual refund record that we just issued. Now I forgot to put in my check number, so I'm going to go back in and actually put that check number in. I have the option to do that. I'm going to update it. Okay, so here we have our refund record. And notice now up here in the payment section, we have a negative payment record. Well, if you think about it, you issued a refund, which is the opposite of a payment. So you have a negative payment record showing up now in your section for payments. Now, remember what the little note said as we were getting ready to save our adjustment. It said that if you have existing adjustments on the account for this particular refund, you need to delete them. Well, that's because if you don't delete them, you're going to have duplicate. You're going to already have, here's a $50 adjustment. Well, you've already got a new $50 adjustment here, so you can't have them both. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete them. And when we do that, this brings us exactly where we need to be. Keep in mind you have a positive adjustment here and a negative payment record. So these two actually cancel each other out, because a negative and a positive will cancel each other out, and the account balance is not going to change. Again, the purpose of this is just to document the refund. Okay, so that's how you use the system to do a manual refund. The other thing that we want to take a look at is how do you do a payment reversal and what's different about it. To do this, let's select a different family from the drop-down. Let's take a look at the Sharnick family here, which shows a $40 credit. If we go into their invoice and payment detail listing, we would probably want to figure out why is there showing a $40 credit. And we can identify immediately that there are no adjustments, so there hasn't been a cancellation of a class or of an event. But if we look at the payment records, there is something very interesting that we can notice right away. And remember, we talked about earlier that if there is a missing invoice icon in a full payment accounting category, this is usually an indication that either there's an overpayment, a duplicate payment, or something of that sort. Well, if we really look carefully at this specific account, we can easily see that this is a duplicate payment. The dates are the same, the description is the same, and if you look at the PayPal ID here, they're exactly the same. So what has happened here is that there is a duplicate payment record on this account for the same invoice. Now you might be wondering, how could that possibly happen? Well, it does occasionally happen. It is not very common, but what can happen is that a family will issue a payment request from our system for PayPal. Sometimes there is a delay in the PayPal payment coming back of a few minutes or maybe longer. And if the family is concerned that maybe the payment didn't go through, they might immediately or within a minute or two issue a second payment request for the same invoice. What happens then is that the original payment request comes back and marks the invoice paid. Then a few minutes later, the second invoice payment request comes back. Well, the payment's already been made and it's already been recorded on the account. There's a payment record and there's a paid status of yes. So instead of just ignoring it, the system actually does make a payment record. And that's important because it probably did go through their PayPal account twice. So they actually did pay twice. So this is a perfect example of when you would want to do a payment reversal. So to do that, what we need to select is add an adjustment, confirm that it's the right family, the Sharnick family. And remember, when you're doing payment reversals or manual refunds, you select your type first, in this case, payment reversal. And this is so that system will bring up paid invoices. Well, here's the paid invoice on the account, which is what we're actually issuing the reversal for. We can put in a description, anything that we want to put in. We might say refund for duplicate payment. We could even be more specific and say of membership fees. If we know the transaction ID number of the refund that we are issuing through PayPal, we can include that here. If we don't know it, we can leave it blank and come back and add it later. And of course, the amount of that refund is going to be $40 because that's the amount that they overpaid. We could send this to the family if we choose to, or we don't have to. And then when we save the adjustment, what we'll have now is a payment reversal indicated here by a negative payment record, which cancels out this positive payment record. So basically this has returned the account back to a zero balance. And again, this is assuming that you've already issued the payment refund to them, either through PayPal, in this case it would be through PayPal, or by check. And this is just to document that the refund took place. There is one other thing I want to show you quickly here, and that is the location where the system records the invoice number that you selected when you created the adjustment. In the case of a payment reversal, like we just did, that will be located in the actual payment record. In the case of a manual refund, it will be located in the adjustment record in the same spot. So let me show you how you access that. So you click on the payment number, in this case, this one here. If it was the adjustment record that you were wanting to look at, you would click on the adjustment record number. And when you enter into that payment record, you can look at the admin notes here and see this is where the system documented the invoice number that you selected when you created the adjustment. If you had additional invoices that were associated with this refund or this reversal, you could add those in here by hand. You could type them in, or you might just add additional comments in here. Maybe the member requested a refund through PayPal, and maybe you want to document that here. And also, if you forgot, as I mentioned earlier, to include your transaction ID of the refund in the initial record, you could come back in and add that here. When I'm finished, I can just update. and it will save the record successfully. You don't actually see anything here, but you can go back to that payment record at any time and see, of course, that what you just added is there in the admin notes. Those admin notes are only seen by an administrator. They are not seen by the members. If you have any questions on this or any other topics, feel free to visit our Help Center located here, where you can find a number of helpful videos on various topics. Or if you still need assistance, please visit your admin homepage in the technical support area and create a ticket. This concludes the video on manual refunds and payment reversals. Thank you for watching.